Hello and welcome to Sci-Fi Christian. I am Ben DeBono here to talk about the final film in my Watching Hamlet series, the David Tennant, Patrick Stewart starring 2009 BBC adaptation, which apparently actually began life on the stage, and then they took the stage version that they had done and made the BBC movie out of it. So a little bit different path. I don't believe any of the others that I have seen have actually been performed, though I'm sure many actors in them. Brana and Olivia have done Shakespeare, or Hamlet, or otherwise on stage a great number of times. But this was actually a performance done for the stage that was then transposed to TV. And I would say that going into this series, the two adaptations I was most looking forward to watching was the Brana one and this. And if you've been watching the other videos, which you can just go back in the history if you haven't seen any of them, they're all recently, within the last couple of weeks from when this one is dated. If you've been watching the series, though, you know I love the Brana version. So that one absolutely did not disappoint. Unfortunately, that was not the case with the David Tennant one. This movie is a mess. It's an absolute mess of an adaptation on a number of fronts. And what's bizarre about it to me is that in the case of the Mel Gibson one, you kind of had a sense from the beginning that this was going off the rails, and they were chopping up Shakespeare, and they were moving this scene's dialogue to here, and blah, 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 blah. And this one actually starts out okay. I wouldn't say that I started out loving it, but I was with it for a long time. And then it really started to lose me on a number of fronts. Let's start with a couple of the basics a couple of things you would expect to be better that are just not up to quality. And then we'll get to there's a couple of things that are just really bad. And I do have some good things to say as well. So a couple of things that just aren't up to quality. First of all, David Tennant, who I really like as an actor. I'm not a huge Doctor Who fan, but I loved his run as Doctor Who. Loved him recently in Jessica Jones. I think he's a fantastic actor. Is really inconsistent in this. He has some great moments, and then there are other times where I just found him annoying. And part of that is the direction and the design. This is a modern adaptation, not in the same way that the Ethan Hawke one that I reviewed last time is, but kind of in the sense of that this is still very much the play, whereas the Ethan Hawke one is dialogue from the play but doing something different. But David Tennant's walking around in jeans and t-shirt and bare feet in many scenes, and it really gives him a sense of feeling like he's playing a 15-year-old. And Hamlet is 30 years old in the play, and I'm not sure how old David Tennant was in 2009, but he had to be right around there. But he just comes across as obnoxious in a great many scenes. Not all. There are some great moments in the play for him, but he just didn't work in the part for me, and I was surprised by that, because I like David Tennant a lot. The modern setting, I already touched on it a little bit, but man, it didn't work. There was a couple interesting things with it, but for example, you see various sections of the movie are filmed through kind of CCTV security cameras, and we see the footage of that intersposed in some scenes. And I was reading online that a lot of people didn't like that. I actually did like that. I thought it worked thematically with the theme of spying. I thought it worked as kind of what was going through my mind. Is this an objective viewpoint of reality, because we don't see the ghost when on the security camera? And so it kind of plays with the story's themes of reality and all of that. And I thought that worked really well. So that worked for me. But other than that, whereas in the Brana one, I came out of that saying, maybe he should have kept it in the original setting. But man, that 19th century setting was just spectacular. Outside of that one thing, I think it was a very big mistake to place this in a 20th century setting. I didn't buy it for a second. It didn't work, and it hurts Hamlet's character the most. just having him do the to be or not to be scene in jeans and a t-shirt. And a scene where David Tennant really does shine in that one. His acting is spot on during the soliloquy, but the design betrays him and robs that scene of a lot of its power because it feels like you're just watching a 15-year-old. And whereas Ethan Hawke's Hamlet, yeah, he's kind of the emo Hamlet or whatever, there's a little bit of that same thing, but even that, I'd probably still give the nod to Tennant as far as the better performance overall, but even that, it worked with what they were trying to do in the movie, at least in my opinion, and this doesn't work here, and it's really unfortunate. I do have to praise a great deal Patrick Stewart, who is phenomenal in this part, right up until the end, which we'll get to in a few minutes. But he is really, really good. Up until the final scene, he was probably my favorite version of Claudius, and I'll get to what went wrong there in a second. But he's phenomenal. The acting is pretty good overall. Nobody outside of him blows me away, but the supporting cast is fine and everything. Interesting choice with Patrick Stewart too is to actually have him play the ghost of King Hamlet, which kind of intrigued me. I wasn't sure what I thought about it at first, and I'm glad most adaptations don't do that, but it worked because it got me thinking about the doubling theme that's going on in Hamlet, and as I started to kind of ruminate on that in my mind, and I'm sure other people have noticed that type of thing way before me, but there's doubling all over the place in the play, whether in the dialogue or in different characters and everything. And I thought that was a great moment that helped me to see the play in a new way. So Patrick Stewart and some of the choices they do with him are really good, and that's the one part where I would say, yeah, this is still worth watching for his performance. Okay, and for some of the things they do that make for interesting interpretation. Okay, so that's some good Patrick Stewart. Some of the things they do with him are good. We get a lot of the play in there. It's 3 hours, so a little less chopped out than some of the Olivier version or the Mel Gibson version. Obviously not the whole thing like the Branagh version, but we get a fair amount of the play. So there's some good things, some things that I didn't hate with Tennant's performance in the modern setting, but still didn't work for me. And then we get to the things that really drive this adaptation into the ground. And the first one is the production value. That this feels like in parts it feels like you're watching a movie, and then there are other parts where it feels like they simply took the sets that they had used in the stage performance and set them up in somebody's basement and just decided to film there. And that doesn't work. I mean, it's okay if you're watching a filmed performance, where they're actually putting the play on a stage and you're watching that. I don't have a problem with that then, but this isn't that. This is not a play that you're watching, it's a movie. And they don't seem to quite realize that movies need to have a cinematic quality. The throne room is atrocious in this movie, and I don't think I could have understood before I watched these 5 adaptations just how crucial the throne room is to Hamlet. So much of the action takes place there, so many key scenes. It is the set that you've got to get right in order to make the visual part of the play believable. And contrast this to Branagh's version, where the throne room is absolutely spectacular in the way that he films that there, and he's able to make it huge and grandiose and feel filled with people, and then other times he's able to film it in a way that makes it feel small and intimate, and just the variety of things Branagh is able to do in that movie with his throne room are spectacular. And here, like I said, it literally feels like the throne room is in somebody's basement. It's dark, it's small, we never see more than about 5 or 6 people in it at a time. You just don't buy it. It has no cinematic quality to it whatsoever. And maybe they were trying to say, well, we're doing this film version for people who didn't make it to London to actually see the stage performance, and we want to give you the same quality, or we want to give you the feeling of having been there. And to that I would say, well, then you should have just filmed the stage performance and called it good enough. If you're actually going to take the time to make a movie out of it, make a movie. Make it cinematic. Make it worth our time. And this fails utterly on the set design. The other really weird choice they make is with the Fortinbras subplot, because they set everything up. You know, we get all of the dialogue and everything about Fortinbras. We have oh, I'm blanking on the word, but the people from Norway, the ambassadors from Norway come and report to Claudius and everything about what's going on. And we have the references to Old Norway, and then we have the scene where Hamlet meets up with Fortinbras' captain, and all of that. And so, okay, they've included the Fortinbras subplot, and then they drop it at the end. He's not there at the final scene. He never shows up. They just completely drop the ball. And you're left wondering, why did you include it in the first place? It's a very bizarre choice. And that's where the runtime of this play, while I am happy that they included more elements than the Mel Gibson version, it really kind of occupies a bizarre no man's land, because stuff like that makes it feel like it should have either been longer, so they could have included the whole Fortinbras subplot, or shorter, and just cut it out, or make a few vague references to it or something. But the way that they've done it just doesn't work. The ending as a whole is a disaster. They completely rush the final scene. And this is where I said I'm going to get back to Patrick Stewart's performance, because Claudius's death is simply bizarre. One of my favorite moments is Hamlet walking up to him and making him drink from the poison cup. And here, you know, Claudius is cut, so he's been poisoned and everything by the rapier. And, Hamlet hands him the cup, and then David Tennant puts the sword at his throat and says, "Drink." And Patrick Stewart literally goes from this intense, powerful character who knows he's beaten but is hanging on defiantly, where he calls us a second before that for his guards to still defend him because he is but wounded. And then he literally goes this, and then drinks the cup. And it's such a bizarre moment. And you think I'm exaggerating. I'm not exaggerating. Look it up on YouTube, Act 5, Scene 2. It's such a bizarre moment. He's just, well, I guess I'll just drink the poison cup. And it takes a great performance, and I won't say it ruins it, but it leaves you with a really bad taste in your mouth about everything else that Patrick Stewart has accomplished in this role, and where he's the one guy who's worth tuning in to watch this. And they drop the ball so spectacularly at the end. I'm so disappointed by this. I was really looking forward to this adaptation, and it's a shame to end this series on such a low note with that. But unfortunately, that's where we're at. I can't recommend this outside of Patrick Stewart's performance, or, if you want to be a completist, or if you're a Doctor Who fan, I'm sure you want to tune in for Tennant. And a lot of people did praise his performance, so maybe you'd like it more than I did. But outside of some interesting choices, a couple of good performances, some interesting thematic twists, this just doesn't work. And the rushed, sloppy, bizarre final scene just feels lazy, and it feels disappointing, and it feels like they just decided to quit. And as long as they're going to leave out Fortinbras, they could have edited out a few more of those scenes. Like, if their time was, this has to be 3 hours and no more, then they could have edited out some of those other scenes, because they weren't going to pay them off anyway, and then given the finale, the fights at the end, the time they needed to be done right. But they don't do that. The finale could not be more disappointing. It is by far the worst version of the final scene out of all 5 of these adaptations, and it's not even close. So, disappointing ending, but at least we'll always have Brana, right? Okay, so this wraps up the 5 movies that I'm going to watch. I am going to come back in a few days or whatever, and after I mull these over a little bit and think about how I compare them, and come up with some, do kind of a final comparison show and tell you what my favorite adaptation was, as though anybody needs to wonder about that. I'd say it's probably pretty obvious if you've watched these videos, but, rank some of my favorite things, and we'll do a little comparison wrap-up show. So that'll be fun, at least for me. And then you can watch it if you want. But that's it for the 5 adaptations. So I'll be back in a few days with that. But until then, I'm Ben DeBono, and this is Sci-Fi Christian. Goodbye.